Hello and welcome to Living in Chicago, the show where I get to interview real Chicagoans about the neighborhoods that they live, work, and play in. I'm your host. My name is Jake Lyons. And in this episode, I interview McDonald Predelus, who is an artist, advertising veteran of the advertising industry, and just all around just kind of Renaissance man. He's a very interesting guy with a lot of interesting things to say about the Wicker Park neighborhood where he lives. Wicker Park, if you're unfamiliar, is northwest of downtown by, I don't know, 3 miles or so. Don't feel like doing the exact math, but it's somewhere up there. It's a subsection of the West Town community area. So if you're familiar with Chicago, you know there's 77 community areas, but each of those community areas has several neighborhoods within it. So West Town has a neighborhood of West Town, Ukrainian Village, Noble Square, some places like that, and also Wicker Park. Wicker Park is a very popular neighborhood in Chicago. It's well, you know what? I'm just going to read to you. This is kind of a nice little cheat code that I've discovered here. I'm just going to literally just read to you what Google says about Wicker Park when you pull it up on Google Maps. Hip Wicker Park has been a residential enclave since Chicago was incorporated as a city in 1837. North Milwaukee Avenue is known for its bustling nightlife, dining, and entertainment venues with Double Door, Subterranean, and Davenport setting the bar for the city's trendy music clubs. North Damon Avenue draws hip crowds with its quirky shops, minimalist cafes, specialty grocery stores, and cool fashion boutiques. In my experience of Wicker Park, I'd say that's a pretty spot on, like 100% accurate. If you're only going to have 3 or 4 sentences to describe Wicker Park, good job, Google, AI, whatever that is. I'd say they did a good job. The dividing lines, so just kind of putting it on a map where it is here, it's between Ashland Avenue and Western Avenue from east-west, and then north-south is between Division Street and technically Bloomingdale Avenue, which at this point is basically a smaller neighborhood street. So that might not be a street that you're super familiar with, but it's a couple blocks north of North Avenue. It's right by the highway, right by the Kennedy. So, you're well positioned there. There's a couple different exits to get right to the highway. You're right next to it, essentially, depending on where. And Milwaukee Avenue is, if the highway is too crowded, you can take Milwaukee Avenue, just zip on right down, and pretty much smack dab right into downtown. Not exactly, but close enough, and then it gets you pretty close to it. And if you're taking the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority, Chicago's main public transit system, the Blue Line would be your main way of getting around, and the Damon stop is right in the middle of Wicker Park, and that's the Damon stop is right. There's a bunch of restaurants and cool things to do right around the Damon stop. Is right there on Damon and Milwaukee, and then the Western Blue Line stop is pretty close to it as well. The Blue Line is the line that will eventually take you to O'Hare Airport. What is it like to live in Wicker Park? Well, that is why we are going to talk to McDonald so that he can tell us all about it. So without further ado, let's get to my interview with McDonald Predelus. All right, joined here today by McDonald Predelus. He is a resident of I believe the Wicker Park neighborhood. We'll get into that a little bit more. He is a bit of a Renaissance man. He's an artist, a technologist, a marketing guru, a skateboarding enthusiast, a wrestling enthusiast. Those are just the kind of the things at the tip of my mind that I know to be true, but this would probably be a good time to toss it over to McDonald and see. McDonald, how would you like to introduce yourself to the audience and have them, what would you like them to know about you?
Yeah, I think you did a good job, an amazing job. Of wrestling, collegiate wrestling, Lane Tech wrestling coach at one point. Just to clarify, it's not the WWE on TV,
right? Yeah, not professional wrestling.
And then I'm a skateboarder. I'm an older skateboarder. I do skateboarding meetups in the 606, which is close to my neighborhood, Wicker Park, Bucktown area. That 606 trail. But other than that, you got everything spot on. A creative director and an artist in the city. Yeah.
Right on. Cool. What about Chicago? We can just start from the beginning. I mean, what brought you to Chicago to begin with, and then Wicker Park specifically?
Um, Honestly, it was someone told me it was a good neighborhood when I lived in New York. Decent area, so I went with it. So far, I've loved it. I've been here since 2016. I came here for work. For a creative director role. My name is McDonald. I was actually a creative director of McDonald's at one point here in Chicago. So hence the reason I came to Chicago. But overall, I really like the neighborhood. Kind of gives me a cleaner, nicer Brooklyn. Of course, every neighborhood, has its issues. But as long as you're aware of your surroundings and when you're out, and it's a relatively nice and safe neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, who might be listening, McDonald's, the global headquarters of McDonald's is located in Chicago. So that would explain that move. Had it moved to the West Loop yet, or was it still in the suburbs when you moved here for that?
No, I worked at an agency that ran the account. So the agency was
Okay.
probably in the West Loop, or I think at the time it was on Michigan Avenue, the agency that I worked for at that time.
Oh, funny. Okay. So you didn't work directly for McDonald's, even though you did work in the same city that you could have worked for directly for McDonald's.
No, so basically the way it happens is advertising and brands like McDonald's usually use an ad agency to create all of their creative work, their promotional work. And McDonald's, if you know the history, it's been with Leo Burnett, which is one of the oldest ad agencies in the US. It was there for a while. It was with that agency. And so agencies pretty much create the brand recognitions of brands. And since their headquarters is here, of course, they'll go with Chicago agency. And American advertising history started in Chicago with Marlboro Man and all of that stuff. So I work in advertising agencies, so I work for different clients. At the time, that agency, one of their biggest clients was McDonald's. Yeah.
I imagine that would be the biggest client for pretty much anybody. That's about as big of a client as you can have, right? Like maybe there's only maybe a handful of brands in the world that would even be like uttered in the same breath as them. So, yeah.
I think
Nice.
I think there's brands like Coca-Cola. There's a couple of historical
Nike, maybe.
Nike. Nike is, when you think about Nike, that's Wyden and Kennedy. Based out of Portland. They do all the advertising for it. And then when people think about TBWA and Jay Chiat, they're the ones who do all the Apple commercials. So it's not Steve Jobs and team. It's the ad agency that does the work. So yeah, I'm a creative on the creative side for brands.
This is just, I don't even know if I'll keep this in the podcast, but I've always just been curious. Who does Geico? And like some of these insurance brands, because like they've just been pumping out like legit content for decades.
Geico will usually they have their own internal ad agency, and they usually just hire creatives that are coming from other agencies, understand how to make commercials, and yeah. So Geico's internal. It was an internal agency.
Oh, okay, and so they're one of the few that keep it in house. That's interesting.
Yeah,
cool. Mm-hmm. I was pretty happy to hear you say that, to compare it to Brooklyn, because that's something that I've been doing for years, even though I was doing this for years before I had even stepped a foot onto Brooklyn. Like I visited Brooklyn for the first time ever last autumn, and but I've been saying for years, like, yeah, Wicker Park, this just seems like what I have built Brooklyn up to be in my mind. It seems like Wicker Park is pretty much that. And Brooklyn, that's like kind of an insane thing to say, because Brooklyn is obviously I think if Brooklyn was its own city, it would be like the 5th biggest city in America or something crazy. So it's not like you can just paint it with like one, narrow stroke like that. But what about Wicker Park made you kind of, give that comparison?
I think just like the spacing of things. I think when you go to Brooklyn, you get to breathe a little bit more. Um, People are not on top of you in certain sections of it. And here, when you get out of the downtown area or any of the other popular areas, you don't see as many people. So it gives you that sense of like you're in a city, but you're not fully in the city. And then there's pockets of small, you know, restaurants and things that you can find around the corner. So it kind of has that
Hmm.
same vibe. But it's in no comparison. I'm saying Wicker Park is like Bucktown 100%. No, none, not at all. Brooklyn is its own unique thing.
Sure.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
but you can get a sense of it. You can get a sense of it just by uh, looking at how the age demographics of the people who live in Wicker Park. You see, it's usually like first kid, younger couples, is what I'm seeing. In Brooklyn, you start to get that vibe of it. And Brooklyn's affordable, so Wicker Park is it is affordable, I would say. Brooklyn is not affordable.
Time for the real estate stats corner presented by me, Jake Lyons, real estate advisor here in Chicago with At Properties and my website, thechicagohomesource.com. In this segment, I am going to give you three stats that I think will paint at least a quick little snapshot of what the real estate price situation is looking like in Wicker Park, what people are actually willing to pay to live in this neighborhood. I think real estate is a very relevant thing. What really is a neighborhood without real estate after all? So hopefully this is entertaining and helpful to somebody out there. The three stats I will throw out are the median sales price for a 2-bed condo, for a house with at least 3 bedrooms, and for a 2-bed rental apartment. So first off, the median sales price as of December of 2023, the most recent stats that we have as of the time I'm doing this. Obviously, these change all the time. The median sales price for a 2-bed condo in Wicker Park right now is at $462,000. That's the median. So 50% sold for more, 50% sold for less. If you're looking more for a house, the median sales price most recently for a house of at least 3 bedrooms in the Wicker Park neighborhood is at $1,365,000. It's the median sales price for a house. And if you want to rent a 2-bed apartment in Wicker Park, the median rental price on that per month will be coming out to $2,695. And that concludes the real estate stats corner. If you have any desire to see what is available on the market right now in the Wicker Park area or anywhere in Chicago for that matter, you can just go to thechicagohomesource.com. You can find that link in the show notes.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Affordability is obviously like, super relative, like Chicago compared to New York is very affordable. Chicago compared to like Des Moines is very expensive, so it is what it is. But um yeah, that all makes sense. Is that where you lived in New York, was Brooklyn?
Yeah, I've lived in Harlem first, and
Hmm.
um, then I moved to Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and yeah, and then I was in Brooklyn, the further south in Brooklyn. But yeah, I like Brooklyn a lot.
Hmm. What would you say has been I guess what had you spent a lot of time in Chicago prior to moving here?
No, I did not. I
Did
did
you
not.
have any kind of like preconceived notions or, anything that you thought going into it that has surprised you about either, the neighborhood you live in or just the city as a whole
No,
since you lived here?
so far nothing really. It
Yeah.
is it is what it is. I think I haven't been too surprised. But Chicago has been a really nice city to live in, and it is a really nice city to live in.
Yeah. What would you say? Because I mean, yeah, we talked about the advertising agency part of what you do, but you have your hands in all kinds of different, you're stirring lots of different pots in sort of the art world. Let's talk about that for a little bit. It's like what all are you into these days?
I think that the art, if we want to talk about art, I think that's the most interesting thing in Chicago at the time, because I think Chicago allows for access to certain things that it's harder to get access to them in and it's harder to get access to them in New York or a bigger city. I think Chicago has an open artist community. It's easier to kind of establish yourself as an artist here,
Hmm.
depending on what type of art you're making, whether it's virtual, visual art or digital art or music art. I think there's smaller communities and pockets of communities that can kind of thrive off of each other in Chicago. And I feel like Chicago gets you to where you needed. You mostly everyone in Chicago does well and leave. That's at least
Hmm.
younger artists or anyone in the art craft, because I think Chicago, other than comedy, even in comedy, most people will do well and leave. No one really stays here in the arts, but it allows you to do
Hmm.
well, gives you access. So I love that about Chicago from my perspective.
It's the spring. It's the
Mhm.
springboard. Yeah, interesting. Do you think that's just because there's too much? There's just too much noise in New York. If you were to start right off there, like just too much competition, too many of this other things vying for people's
Yeah,
attention there.
I think so too. And then of course in New York, I think you need a little bit more money to
Yeah,
do some of the things. Like I have
just to exist.
yeah, just to exist. I have a pretty large studio space, which I'm going to start hosting some art events out of. Um, and a place like this would not be, it would be insane to try to rent out a place like this in New York or any other major city, I think.
Right. Or you would have to travel so far away from wherever you are to get there. It would be like the other side of
Mhm.
New Jersey or something. I don't know the geography well enough in that area to start throwing areas out there, but that's probably what it would be, right? You just have to commute like an hour and a half to get to your studio to find something that's comparable to what you have. Is that space for that kind of price?
Exactly.
Or would it even be, if that even, yeah. What's your studio's East Garfield Park?
Yes.
What do
Yeah,
you
it's
think
an
of that
ex-
area so far? How do you like having the studio there?
I mean, with this area, get in while you can.
Yeah.
if you, I feel I already see what's going to happen. There's a green line here. Yeah, it's if you can afford it, buy it. Because I give it maybe 5 years.
Hmm.
Because I give it about 5 years, and it's going to become, you know, what's the term?
It's
I
gonna
think.
it's gonna take that next step,
Mhm.
whatever that is. Yeah. I guess we can I'm probably alluding to the big G word there, the gentrification, but
Oh, gentrification. I thought you were going to say like greenhouse or something. Another G word.
green.
The greenhouse effect. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a nice neighborhood. I think Chicago has a bunch of pockets of different neighborhoods. I think especially for artists, it depends on where you want to be. I think it has Bucktown has access to the airport quickly, and it has access to downtown quickly. So it's smack dab in the middle. East Garfield Park, it's a little bit further away, but if you get on the Green Line, which will take you to the Loop, the West Loop, it'll take you downtown relatively quickly. So it's Chicago's kind of built in a way where you can survive without having a car. You don't really need a car,
Hmm.
but due to the weather, I would recommend everyone get a car because it's cold. It's extremely
Yeah.
cold. Mhm.
For sure. Yeah, you certainly don't need one, but if you can swing it, it's probably still still better to have one than not. But that's having a car is expensive. There's like car payment and insurance and taxes, the stickers and the like all the parking tickets and speed camera tickets and all that kind of stuff that you will just inevitably rack up, you know. So yeah, I totally understand why somebody would wanted to say nah to hell with that, and they'll just stick to the CTA the whole time. And it's cool that you can do that. Like that, we probably have I don't know. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's efficient. It's a little bit more efficient. At least when I left New York, it's more efficient than New York's transportation because you can time the bus, you can time the train, and it's usually accurate here. I think New York, they recently started having timing on the buses and trains now. So, I mean, as far as public transportation goes, Chicago's up there.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would still say New York's is superior. I think New York's public transit system is just insane. The fact that how old it is. I mean, the fact they built that thing 150 years ago with just like some dudes and some dynamite is just an insane thing to even try to wrap your head around. And then like just how thoroughly covered the whole city is by it is pretty impressive. Like with Chicago, I mean, it does a really good job. Like you can get at least like broad strokes anywhere you want in the city, but if you want to get to like some specific areas, you kind of have to get out of like the main arteries and start going down like some, smaller veins of the bus systems rather than the trains. It can't just take you everywhere. But it's definitely, I don't know, probably number 2 in America as far as public transit systems go. Can't really think of anything else.
I was just down in Miami for Art Basel, and I'm pretty sure their public transportation is not as good. At least if you need to go to the airport, it's just no timing on it. And I think
Chicago's, it's free though. That's nice. At least it's free, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So you've just been in Wicker Park the whole time you've been here. What are just some favorite things about Wicker Park that you've come across since you've been there, like some hidden gems or restaurants or like eclectic shops and things?
There's it's always changing, there's always some new hidden thing. I think that when we allude to the point where we talk about that Brooklyn vibe, you have that speakeasies are popping up in here.
Yep.
If you look at the stretch from Damon and Milwaukee all the way to California, there's in Milwaukee, there's tons of things always popping up, and that dynamic's always changing. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite places is Small Cheval, if you're a burger person. And then there's so many things to choose from in that stretch of stores of things to do. If you're looking at grocery stores, there's tons of them. Really good one, everything from an Aldi to a Fresh Market in that area. And then there's even smaller, quicker convenience stores for quick bites or quick things that you want.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the neighborhood, and if not the neighborhood, then at least the city, would you say that it has influenced your own like personal and creative endeavors in any kind of way?
That's hard to say because I'm always traveling, always being inspired by different things. But I think your city does it kind of inspire you a bit. Just the art around murals inspires me. But yeah, you're kind of what they say is a product of your environment. So as long as good art keeps coming out of Chicago, I'll keep making good art.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. What kind of stuff are you working on nowadays? But in case anybody's watching this on YouTube, what's this the Ghost Gate logo, if you want to elaborate on just what that's about?
Well, basically, Ghost Gate is the largest skateboarding meetup group in the U.S. Started in New York. We have about 4,000 members. So what that means is it runs itself. So they go on meetup.com and set up skate meetups where you learn how to skate or skate with people who wants to just cruise. And then in Chicago, it's about 500 members, which what that means with 500 members, meaning I have to set up a meetup and I'll be there. And 4, 5, 6 people will show up to skate. It's not as self-ran as New York, because of course, commuting in New York, skateboarding is a lot more of a means of travel there than here. And then so Go Skate is a skate brand, and then that character is called the Bomberhead, which is the Bomberhead character, which there's tons of stuff coming out with him. A lot of the artwork that I do, the murals you'll see, if you see 1 or 2 in the city, are around that character. He's a conduit of joy and just really just different styles. A lot of the stuff I do with it glow in the dark art. So yeah, it's just fun, just a really fun brand to play around with, and tons of always exploring new things in art with that character.
Cool. Nice. Let's see. What is a challenge that you've noticed in your neighborhood? Or a challenge that your neighborhood is currently facing? Something you would change if you could, maybe.
I mean, I would have said the constant repavement of the road, but I think you need to do that here in Chicago because of the snow.
Yeah.
It cracks. But one thing I would change, really, I would hope for there's a restaurant that just keeps near me, that just keeps every 2 years it dies out. I want more consistency in some restaurants, really good ones. That's the one thing I would change. How does the community support the local restaurants that are popping up? Because I feel like sometimes the restaurants in a new area, when we use that G word, always feels like they're outsiders and not part of the community. The ones that survive, become sustainable, the ones that are somehow find a way to be part of the community, involve themselves in the community. You know, the owners know you. Shout out to, this bar on Milwaukee called Green Eye Bar. That's pretty good. All the people have been there since I know. There's a couple other places that are, you see the locals are always there. I think that's one thing I would add. When the new restaurants become part of the community, but I wouldn't change anything. I love it.
Nice. Yeah. So what was that one called? The Green Eye?
Yes, the Green Eye.
Nice. I'll put their link in the show notes. Everybody can go there and check it out. I try to do that for every place that comes up during these conversations. Like if somebody has something good to say about it during the interview, I'll just put the link in the show notes. Try to support. I mean, yeah, man, I think those are at least the biggest questions I had in terms of the area that you live in. I mean, I guess just bottom line, who would you say that the Wicker Park, Bucktown, greater area is for, and why should somebody want to live there?
It's for someone who doesn't want to move to the burbs, but likes kind of a little bit more space, city vibes. It's for someone who wants to be part of like a quick, ever-changing kind of community. And it's for someone who's kind of like always want to have something different to do. Basically, someone who wants to live in New York but doesn't want to deal with living in New York, I would say. Keep it honest. You don't want to deal with all the mess and the trash. And you get a city vibe without it being messy and dirty and all of that.
Very good. Is there any what would you like out of the audience here to follow up with you? Are there any projects you're working on that you're excited about? You'd like to get out there, or how
Just
can they follow you and see
just go
what you're up to?
GoSkate.com.
Mm-hmm.
GoSkate.com. That'll take you to the skate meetup group. You just click on Chicago, and then you'll see you can pick a location that you want to have a skate meetup, and we'll bring helmets, boards, and give you a lesson on how to skate, cruise safely. And then that's usually happening in the 606 during the nicer weather. And then also follow GoSkate.com and GoSkate for art shows and events. There's going to be a show at Fulton Street Collective, about 70 different artists. I'm curating that.
Nice.
Check that out.
When is that?
December 16th.
Okay, that'll have happened already by the time this episode airs, unfortunately. But
it's
cool
okay.
that you're doing that. Shout out Fulton Street.
That is true. So, what else? What else I would shout out? Yeah, just definitely get a Bomberhead Digital Collective piece. There's a lot I'm making around there. A lot I'm making for the community and people who are involved in it. So yeah.
Great stuff, man. McDonald, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and experience on Chicago and your neighborhood and what you're up to here. And I know a lot of people will get a lot out of this. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.